see how it spreads very nicely. We're thinking of using another observation deck originally. It's a very touristy location though. There's going to be a few groups there, and we want to do something a little bit different right now. Just end the day in a different way, so it's just us. So we just invaded this community right now, and without asking permission, got off the bus and we're standing inside the area. Hopefully they will take it, in a positive note, and if not, then we'll deal with it, okay? Just letting you know before we start. Jews mark out Shabbat, because if you don't mark out Shabbat, it's just a Saturday. I lived in the States for a very long time, lived in the States for close to 5 years on and off, and I remember many times in which I would wake up in the morning, and my mom would call me, or my mom would send me a message, and she would be like, happy whatever holiday it is. And I'm like, really? You know that? Because when you're not surrounded by a Jewish congregation, it just disappears, it dissolves almost. If you're not part of a Jewish congregation in the States, it disappears from your lives. However, in Israel, you're so surrounded with it, because the population is so massively Jewish, that whether you are an observant Jew or non-observant Jew, the population around you is doing it. And Shabbat becomes a Shabbat because a lot of businesses are closed. Shabbat becomes a Shabbat because you see people dressing differently, preparing for it. And in most cities, you'll see Jews walking into the market area on Friday morning or Saturday or Thursday afternoon or evening and just buying whatever it is that they need for Shabbat. They'll clean the house, they'll cook the food, and they'll dress in a different way. They'll mark it as a special day. It started, the tradition of marking it, what we call Kabbalat Shabbat, translates as the acceptance of Shabbat, accepting Shabbat into your midst. Right? Marking it out by doing so, making it something specific, started in an area really close to where we are. Relatively in that direction is a mountain called Mount Meron, which is very strongly associated in Jewish culture today with the place where the Messiah will start the journey into Israel from. And Mount Meron, very next to it, is a city called Tzfat, which is the Jewish center of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. And in the 15th, 16th century, the rabbis that were gathering in there, that start immigrating into Israel, because it was all of a sudden allowed by the Ottomans to come in, started creating a ceremony or a service that will mark out the fact that Shabbat will start. And it basically goes through 6 or 7 different psalms marking the days of the week. So it's a fairly long ceremony or service. It takes 40-45 minutes normally in a household. Has all sorts of different things. But the 2 most important elements that exist within this service are the 2 blessings that I'm about to do with you, which will be conducted in any Jewish holiday. In any Jewish holiday, we'll have the same 2 blessings. Now we start by covering the Challah. Are you familiar with the term Challah? Challah is a type of bread that Jews use on specific unique situation or holy situations. I don't want to call it holy situations, but festive situation. A challah normally is a braided piece of bread. So that the way you make a braid, you would make the bread in a similar way. And there's an idea behind the braiding. It has to do with the connecting of the people together on this specific occasion. We normally use 2 challahs, right? 2 challahs because this is a Friday. Think about the biblical times. Think about the Exodus. The Jews that are wandering in the desert, and they're given on a daily basis man, right? This wondrous food. But they're told not to gather more than 1 portion, right? Don't try to keep it, and when they do, it spoils. The only day of the week in which they are allowed to keep it is the Friday. And on Shabbat it does not spoil, so that on Shabbat they will not be forced to go and look for one, right? And because of that, we mark it with 2 challahs. That's one explanation, and the most common explanation to why we mark it with 2 challahs. But the thing is that in Jewish culture, we look very closely at the scriptures, or are now understanding the Bible. And Jews normally don't call it scriptures, but the Bible, and they look at the different ways in which everything is written in the Bible. The belief is that everything has meaning. When you look at the 7 species of grain and fruit, you will see that wheat and barley appear first. The vine appears later. And so technically by tradition, you are supposed to bless the wheat first, only after the grapes. But that's not what we do. We bless the grapes first, and after that the wheat, after that the challah. And because of that, we cover the bread, the challah, so that we do not insult it. Because it's technically the elder. and yet we just put it aside. So the loophole, or the way Jewish custom has taken it, is that we cover the challah and we pretend we don't know it's there. We haven't noticed it in a way, right? We cover it. It's currently covered with a plastic bag, which is somewhat clear. But imagine that it's covered with a nice embroidered piece of fabric. We cover it, and we don't know it's there. We bless the wine. After that, we reveal the challah, and aha! Oh, we messed up again. Then we bless the challah. This is a very, very specific way of doing things, and all the elements that we use in the blessing of these specific elements come from the temple grounds. The blessing of the wine, the blessing of the challah. The challahs were used on the altar. There were 12 challahs that were presented that Friday to mark the 12 tribes. The wine was very consistent with the workings of the temple as well. We also use salt normally, which is the salt that comes from the sacrificial altar again. Cleansing the hands in the middle of the ritual, between the actual blessing of the wine and the blessing of the bread, we normally cleanse the hands by washing in a specific ritual way, which has a pitcher that has 2 handles. You fill it up, you wash each hand 3 times, and then you wash the other one 3 times. It's a small cleansing that marks the idea of cleansing before something significant, and we refrain from talking after we cleanse the hands until we bless the bread. Right? So there are all sorts of different ways of understanding this, and by doing so, and involving with it the psalms and the various songs that are to be said and so forth and so on, we mark this as a specific, unique situation that leaves the secular or the mundane behind, as we transcend to the holy day, which will be marked by 25 hours of Shabbat, refraining from work, having more family time, taking pleasure in the small things in life. The things that we normally don't have enough time for. And then at the end of Shabbat, we'll have another ceremony that will close it up. It's called the Havdalah, which is basically to differentiate between the holy times and coming back to the mundane. The Jewish aspiration is that Shabbat will never end. And Kabbalists, Jewish mysticists, are very seriously involved in this whole process of how do you ascend to different levels, and you get to a point in which after Shabbat, instead of returning to Sunday, you get to the figure 8. When you think about the figure 8 and you turn it up sideways, you get the sign of infinity. The infinite concept of Shabbat is part of the Jewish aspiration to moving on from the mundane, the regular world, and going back to living in the Garden of Eden, in a place with no suffering, with no poverty, with no famine, with no nothing, with no illness, and so forth and so on. So part of the messianic expectation of the end of days has to do with the ascending to that level. And Kabbalists are very seriously involved with the idea of how do you get there. One of the ideas in Judaism is that you get there through Tikkun Olam. Have you ever heard this term before? Tikkun Olam translates as fixing the world. By Jewish tradition, when God created the world, He created it as an imperfect creation, because we are imperfect beings. And as imperfect beings, we cannot live on a perfect creation. And so He shattered the perfect creation that was here before the creation of the physical world. And we hear in the Jewish tradition about, in the book of Genesis, about the separation of the earth and the heavens, right? By Jewish tradition, that happens on the Mount Moriah, when He creates the physical world, and it starts from Mount Moriah, which is why Mount Moriah is referred to a lot of times as the foundation stone. But when that happens, and the imperfect creation of the world takes place, the perfect creation is shattered into numerous, uncountable shards of light that go shooting into the known or unknown universe. And in order to recreate the perfect creation, you have to draw those shards of light back in. How do you do that? By Jewish mysticism, you do that by performing good deeds for others with no gain for yourself, which is what we call Tikkun Olam, fixing the world. That's where it starts from. So that's the Jewish inspiration, and it's marked in Shabbat time. That's the time, which is why the beginning of Shabbat is always a sad and joyful moment, and the end of Shabbat is also a joyful yet really sad moment, which you return to the regular days. Shabbat is a special day in Judaism. And it has to do very strongly associated with the idea that is very clear to you all, the fact that on the 7th day God rested, 7th day of creation. 6 days of creation and the 7th day of rest. And that's where this whole thing starts from. This blessing that I'm about to do about the wine and about the bread is done in any holiday, including the holiday of Passover. When Jesus and the disciples are gathered around the Last Supper table, or really, I mean, Leonardo da Vinci kind of threw us all off, and Michelangelo, whoever made that picture, they never sat around the table. Definitely not on one side when the artist can take the picture, right? And the way people, they were probably sitting on the floor, eating from a central bowl or central plate. But it's besides the point. When they did this, when they broke bread together, they blessed the wine, and then they blessed the bread. And that is the first, what we call communion, correct? The Last Supper. Later on, Catholic tradition, of course, recognizes as the first Mass. This happens following Jewish tradition, Jewish culture, the last time they share bread and wine together. And so, I'm just going to do this really simply. I'll do the blessing in Hebrew, and then I'll translate it into English. I'm not using any script, so if I get this wrong, please forgive me. I haven't done this in a while. Definitely not translate into English, right?
We won't know any different.
No, but the video camera later on that will compare it with actual things will. So normally we fill the cup until it's overflowing. On purpose we want it to flow so that the joy or the positiveness in life will be the same, that it overflows, that it's not contained. And so we fill the cup until it overflows. Just a bit. There you go. Well, it happens every time though. Two blessings. The first one is the blessing of the vine. Blessed are you, God, creator of the world, creator of the vine. Amen. On your behalf, I'll take a sip. In the Jewish tradition, this is disgusting. Following Jewish
you get it.
We will pass this cup along between the congregation or between the people that are gathered, going from the elder to the youngest. In the Orthodox denomination, it will be the male first and then the women. In most of the other congregation with conservative or reform, it says simply by the age. In my family, we just do it by the order of people sitting in the table, so we don't even mark anything. I am aware to the fact that there are people here that do not consume wine, and so I'm not passing it along. If anybody wants to take a sip afterwards, you're more than welcome to do so. But as a sign of respect to you, I'm not going to hand it to you, okay? Just for that respect. And then, of course, we uncover the bread, realizing, oh, there was bread here, we forgot. So normally we would use a much bigger challah, but this morning, this is what we had. This is interesting. I like this one better. Again, we use 2 to mark the fact that manna was given and 2 manna were produced. Before we start the service of Shabbat, normally, it has become a custom that women will light the candles. We light 2 candles because there are twice in the Bible it is mentioned that you are supposed to both remember and keep the Shabbat. Zachor v'shamor, and in the both times that it is mentioned in variations. Once it says to remember and once it says to keep. And so the candles are also 2. And people mix this out. They think that the bread, the 2 has to do with that. It's not. It's because of the man. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, God, creator of the world, produces bread from the earth. And I don't think you'll take offense with this if you are to try a piece of bread. So normally we simply break it apart or pass it along, and people can just take a piece.
Is it gluten-free?
You can just break it apart and pass it along. By doing so, I'm turning the air on. By doing so, we've committed something that has been done thousands of years. We've just broken bread. It's a sign of hospitality. When you look back at the Bible and you see the meeting between Melchizedek and Abraham at Jerusalem, at Salem, thousands of years ago, 3,800 years ago, they break bread. Breaking bread is a symbol of
hospitality. You're protected under my household, or I'm protected under your household, and you can spend the Shabbat together. A religious family that will invite you for Shabbat dinner, nowadays less, but in old times, would be under the expectation that you want to spend the Shabbat with them. As at the end of Shabbat, you cannot travel back to your home since Shabbat has started. There are things that you have to refrain from. And so by inviting you into Shabbat dinner, they take the responsibility of you being a guest in their home. You're under their roof, you're under their protection, and you have all your needs are to be supplied by them. Normally we do this after the sunset, as Shabbat starts after sunset. Since you're not actually marking Shabbat, I didn't think this would matter to you. So we allowed ourselves a little bit of lenience in the whole thing, and we're taking this in stride. But in all seriousness now, welcome home. Welcome to Israel. And Shabbat will start shortly, and we'll have dinner together at the hotel. But we thought that we will do this outside, so that we can do this in peace, without other groups around us, and possibly connect with what the people of old used to do, where these traditions start from, where the bread and the wine still exist today in the Christian culture. And the same service has been performed by Jews for thousands of years now, still performed in the majority of the households around you, just longer. Okay? So I thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.